"9/11 truthers will argue that molten steel was seen dripping out of the Twin Towers prior to collapse, and that it was also found in large quantities in the debris pile after collapse. They claim that the only way to explain these observations is the usage of thermite to bring down the buildings in a controlled demolition. As I show here, this position is unjustified for many different reasons. There's no good reason to believe that the molten material dripping out of the buildings was steel. Aluminum from the airplanes is a better explanation given its low melting point, and given that it glows bright orange at the temperatures that would have been present within the towers. One key piece of evidence that truthers point to support a thermitic demolition is video of molten metal flowing out of the South Tower prior to its collapse. You can find other videos of larger quantities of molten aluminum that aren't just bright orange within their container, but that remain bright orange as they're being poured. Richard Gage is simply mistaken when he says that molten aluminum doesn't glow in daylight conditions. Even small quantities of molten aluminum can turn and stay bright orange while being poured. But just think about what thermitic reactions look like, how incredibly blindingly bright they are, and ask yourself, how could they possibly have been used to weaken these exterior columns, yet not have been visible to anybody filming? The very idea itself of using thermite to perform a controlled demolition is ridiculous. So if you have an area where fires are burning hot enough to melt aluminum and cause it to glow orange, you would also have fires hot enough to not melt steel, but nonetheless cause it to glow bright orange. And because these different building materials would be in such close proximity to one another, and because they'd basically be the same color from the heat, it could produce the very convincing illusion that the steel itself had become molten, when in reality the only molten metal present in the debris pile is aluminum. So you could pick up an orange hot steel beam that's lodged in an area where there's also a pool of orange hot molten aluminum, and it would appear to drip molten steel when really it would drip molten aluminum.
Mr. Brickhead. While most of the herd spends more time taking a shit than they actually do spending the time to research the facts, I will give you some props, some nerd points, for at least spending some time and trying to learn something. But as Fire Marshal Bill would say,
let me show you something.
Before I get to your assumption that we saw pouring aluminum on 9/11 from the World Trade Center, let's first address your failure to explain why the aluminum can pour as a silver, chrome color, or as either a red, orange, and yellow colors. You seem to brush off the color difference of pouring aluminum as an odd behavior of aluminum, as if there is no answer and it's just bewildering. You fail to grasp and or explain the truth to your audience. The color difference has to do with the difference between temperatures and the melting point of aluminum in reference to its color. So, yes, the melting point of aluminum is around 1225 degrees Fahrenheit, okay, or around 663 degrees Celsius. And at this temperature, the aluminum will pour out with a silver or chrome look to it. And at this temperature, the aluminum becomes liquid and flows. However, if you melt the aluminum way past its melting point of 1225 degrees Fahrenheit, it will, of course, glow bright red, orange, or yellow, depending on its temperature. Here we have another brickhead nerd who pokes fun at 9/11 conspiracy theorists who say aluminum cannot pour out hot orange, but he fails to explain the truth and the difference between melting points versus color temperature indicators of various metals. Then, I couldn't stop laughing. This brickhead then spills the beans on himself as he admits he left the aluminum in way too long, and it heated way beyond its melting point.
Of course, pour some molten aluminum onto it. It looked super bright orange, and that's because a cloud started rolling in, and despite what the conspiracy theorists say, molten aluminum definitely does glow orange.
Man, you are one pathetic loser.
What's your case?
Our case is simply this.
Let me tell you something.
Alright. Anyway, the molten aluminum was way overheated. I left it in the forge for way too long, and that's why it's glowing that awesome orange color.
Alright. Anyway, the molten aluminum was way overheated. I left it in the forge for way too long, and that's why it's glowing that awesome orange color.
So, to clarify, aluminum's melting point is 1225 degrees Fahrenheit and will pour out as having a silvery or chrome look to it. But when the temperatures exceed way beyond aluminum's melting point, it can pour out as a reddish, orange, or yellow color, which is depending on how hot the temperature reaches and where the melting point is of that particular metal. You remind me of the other fool who I saw on YouTube trying to debunk 9/11 conspiracies with his little forgery when he actually proves the 9/11 conspiracists correct. This 9/11 conspiracy debunker actually unknowingly admits the maximum temperature that can be reached with jet fuel is around 1500 degrees Fahrenheit, but fails to explain that those numbers are achieved in a manipulated, man-made environment like a kiln or a forge, and that these temperatures are not obtainable in normal circumstances. Normal fuel fires will burn around 800 degrees Fahrenheit or so. So even if we used the maximum temperature that can be achieved in a controlled environment, in this make-pretend land of bullshit, he admits that he exceeded and knows that the maximum limit is an additional 300 degrees above the maximum, which would be around 1800 degrees Fahrenheit at the minimum. And then he uses a half-inch thin steel as his example. An example of lies and complete bullshit.
And that old tired argument, that question. Jet fuel only burns at 1500 degrees, and since steel melts at 2700 degrees, 9/11 was a conspiracy. I am so sick and tired of this argument. If it was conspiracy, I do not care. What I am upset about is the retarded metallurgical things that you guys are saying. I'm not arguing the facts. Jet fuel does in fact burn at 1500 degrees. Steel will start melting, some carbon steels, at 2300 degrees. But if you hold this up as a reason for conspiracy, you are an idiot. This is a piece of half-inch thick steel, A36 structural steel, designed for structures. Now, in my furnace, I have an identical piece of half-inch bar of steel, just like this. And it's going to be around 1800 degrees, just 300 more than jet fuel, when it comes out.
And it's going to be around 1800 degrees, just 300 more than jet fuel, when it comes out.
I'm not arguing the facts. Jet fuel does in fact burn at 1500 degrees. Steel will start melting, some carbon steels, at 2300 degrees. This is a piece of half-inch thick steel, A36 structural steel, designed for structures.
Now, let's address your assumption that the yellow-orange hot liquid metal pouring out from the World Trade Center is just aluminum. As your brickhead just learned, regardless of what you assume this liquid metal is, we know for a fact that these colors are indicating temperatures way beyond the melting point of 1,225 degrees Fahrenheit. As we clearly see, the colors of the liquid are not silver or chrome, but bright orange and yellow colors indicating temperatures between 1,800 degrees Fahrenheit to as much as even as 2,750 degrees Fahrenheit. I am not going to make an ass of myself and say what I think that metal is, because I do not have a sample to test, but I can make a logical observation and determine that regardless of the type of flowing liquid metal we see, we know its temperatures have reached around twice as much as the melting point of aluminum. Now, let's get to another assertion you make, and you say it looks like we are looking at molten aluminum pouring out of the World Trade Center, and how it cannot be thermite, and how ridiculous conspiracy theorists are for making such claims. Well, Mr. Brickhead Smarty Pants, it's time to set your pants on fire with some more facts and logic. First of all, once again, I am not going to assume like an ass and say it is or is not thermite, as I do not have a sample to test. But I will, once again, apply basic observation, logic, and wisdom to prove that your theories and your philosophies are greatly flawed. You see, when we observe liquid metal like aluminum pouring, they look nothing like what we see pouring out of the World Trade Center. As metal liquid pours, as we see from these samples, do you notice any slag splashing and sparkling all around? No, we do not. But take a look at a thermite reaction, and you'll notice the fireworks we see as the chemical reactions take place. Notice how the liquid metal, beads, and fireworks and sparks are ejected and splattered about as the metal liquid pours out. And for those who say it's just the wind blowing the aluminum all around, we do not see the wind splashing the liquid in one direction as wind would tend to do. And we notice that the color stays the same and does not cool down, which would turn silver or chrome looking as the aluminum falls in little small beads. We don't see that. We see it keeps the color orange, yellow metal, liquid looking, splattering, and falling. The same exact look as we see with all of the thermite reactions and videos that we can see on the internet. When the planes hit the World Trade Center, most of the jet fuel actually exploded on impact and blew up outside of the building. And when fuel ignites, it follows itself until it is all ignited. It does not leave some unused fuel and some unburnt fuel anywhere. So, most of the jet fuel had actually exploded on impact outside of the building, as we see a lot of smoke afterwards with various small fires. We do not see a burning, fiery inferno that melts the steel on 9/11. But fools like you believe that jet fuel fires melted the steel and the aluminum on 9/11. Funny how this was the last time we ever saw a hydrocarbon fire melt thick iron, steel, construction steel buildings. We see many cars, homes, and buildings become engulfed with flames and burned to a crisp. But we never see melting steel cars, and we don't see melting steel buildings collapsing. So, Mr. Brickhead, I just wanted to say that this is just the beginning, my child. Much more brick walls to tear down coming soon. Peace, love, and wisdom. Aloha.
We're doomed.